Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Command Score Studio. Welcome to the show. So, if you haven't seen my most recent episode on Gixie and Puppeteer, make sure you check that episode out because this brand new card has me saying, whoa, that's really good. Whoa, that can combo in these ways. Whoa. Why am I saying whoa so much? Well, blame Eddie for that, but we'll get to that here in a bit. But yeah, do not leave just yet because first up, you need to stay tuned for this episode because my goodness, is this a powerful Mythic? I mean, it's a green Mythic. There's a lot of those that are really powerful, but this one, oh, it does something quite different. And yeah, I can see this one seeing a ton of play. And now, blame Eddie in the comments below for any mistakes that I make. Blame Eddie for the recommendations that he made on this episode, and just blame Eddie in general. And now, let's jump into it. So, first up, a big thank you to MTG Goldfish for the translated version of this card. Awaken the Woods is a sorcery that costs X green, and it says, create X 1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. And a quick reminder that they are affected by summoning sickness because, well, they are creatures. But, yeah, I mean, even with that little reminder, yeah, this is an incredibly good card. Yeah, I don't know how else to put it. This is just a very good Mythic. Basically, hey, pour a ton of mana into that X. I mean, you're in green, so of course you've got plenty of great ways to ramp. Now, including this, essentially. So yeah, pour a ton of mana into that X and almost nearly double, essentially, your resources on your next turn. Because, of course, with those creature tokens being Forest Dryad lands, well, yes, they are creatures, but they are also lands, and they're forests, so they can tap for a green. So basically, you're just like, yeah, I'd like to land ramp X, essentially, while also, you know, having them in there as creature tokens. So yeah, they can, you know, provide combat functions as well. They can, you know, block if I need them to block. I can, you know, swing if I need to swing with them. We'll talk about some ways to, you know, make them even more impactful and effective. But yeah, mostly you're just gonna be like, yeah, I just have a ton of extra lands now. I mean, you're in green, so of course you already do, but I've got even more extra lands than you do now. I can just pump a ton of mana into this, get way too far ahead of everyone, and unless there is a board wipe, and yes, that is the kind of one major downside to this, that those are still, yes, creature lands. So if there is a board wipe that can take out creatures, it's going to be taking out your creature lands. But for the time being, when those creatures are in play, they're going to be incredibly impactful and can really skyrocket you well ahead of your opponents. So when it comes to mass creature token X spells, I mean, this one's toward the top of the list because although, you know, it's not an instant speed or anything like that, like, you know, something like Secure the Waste, it is, you know, again, a separate function. It's not just, hey, creature tokens. It's, hey, creature tokens that can also just tap for mana, you know, basically just, hey, make a ton of mana dorks, basically. But they're also lands, and that has different implications. So we'll talk about that here in a bit. Yeah, this is very good. Very gross, and I expect to see it when I'm playing against certain green decks, and we'll talk about specific ones here in a bit. I mean, basically in any deck that's able to make a ton of mana, yeah, you can just dump all that mana into this and probably get a good result out of it. You know, just making an army and making, you know, a ton of extra mana on your next turn, or even sometimes right away, and we'll talk about those ways here in a bit. And of course, we'll talk about commanders that are definitely going to want to consider this card. But before we do that, let's talk about the card that probably inspired this one and basically what you are making token copies of, essentially, and that would be basically like a Dryad Arbor. It's a 1/1 land creature forest Dryad, so yeah, again, basically the exact same thing as those tokens that you are making, and of course, it can tap for green. Though also, again, it does remind you that Dryad Arbor isn't a spell. It's affected by Summoning Sickness, and it has tap at green. So yeah, also affected by Summoning Sickness, obviously, like your creature token lands are. But of course, like those creature tokens, I mean, this has that extra utility that, hey, I can either be a creature, I mean, I'm already a creature, but I can be utilized in combat, and of course there are ways to make me more effective in combat, but also, yeah, I can just tap for mana, which you're going to do a lot of. So yeah, you can definitely see where the inspiration from Awaken the Woods came, from, essentially. It's kind of like a combination between this and, just, a normal creature token maker, an X spell. Now, because those Awaken the Woods lands are creature tokens specifically, and not just, land tokens, which I don't know if we've seen any actual just land tokens just yet. Please let me know in the comments below if we've seen any, non-creature land tokens. I mean, you can make them, sure, with like Orvar. Anyways, I'm off track, but yeah, because they are also creatures, although again, there's that downside that they're more susceptible to getting removed because of, a board wipe or whatnot, you also can utilize them in a different way than just your lands might be able to be utilized, like with something like a Vitalize. Vitalize is an instant for just a single green mana, and it says untap all creatures you control. So, kind of a way to either provide pseudo-vigilance for your creatures, or again, a way to essentially, hey, utilize those tap abilities again. So, your creature lands, which again are basically like mana dorks, you tap them for a ton of mana, use one of that green to just cast this, untap all of them, do it again. So it's kind of like a massive ritual effect in combination with this. But speaking of massive, I mean, yeah, there are plenty of ways, especially just in green even, to just pump your team a ton. So yeah, like Beastmaster Ascension. Whenever a creature you control attacks, you put a quest counter on Beastmaster Ascension. As long as it's got 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5. So instead of your lands being just little 1/1s, now those Forest Dry lands are 6/6s. So yeah, I mean, obviously you need to attack with 7 creatures first. That is, I mean, that's a given, right? But if you put 7 into that X and then you next turn attack with them, cool, that's 35 damage coming through. But no, that math was wrong. 42 damage coming through. That math was right. I mean, I guess I was thinking the extra damage, but yeah, a massive pump effect. Of course, there are plenty of other ones that you can really take advantage of being able to make a massive army very quickly. There are also some very specific things that you very well might want to consider if your deck utilizes a lot of land creatures. I mean, Embodiment of Insight. Hey, it's a Vigilant Elemental that says land creatures you control have Vigilance. And of course, on top of that, whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, you can have target land you control become a 3/3 elemental with haste until end of turn. It's still a land. Now, this one is kind of weird, and I believe this would work. But again, you cast your Awaken the Woods, let's say again, 5 in that X, okay? You make 5 of those land creature tokens. Those lands are entering the battlefield, and yeah, they can target themselves. So your land creatures say, hey, landfall. Whenever land is battlefield under control, you may target land you control become a 3/3 elemental with haste. So those land creature tokens that you just had come into play target themselves with those triggers. Each of them become 3/3s until end of turn with haste. And on top of that, again, those land creatures have vigilance, so swing away with those, 15 damage or so if you want to. Then you could also just tap them right away as well to get some mana back out of that spell that you just cast. Next up, a commander that actually deals with land creatures. How about Tatiova, Steward of Tides? Land creatures you control have flying, so yeah, a good way to get those land tokens through if you want. And whenever a land enters battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more lands, up to 1 target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land. Up to 1 wizards. Why? Fine. Anyways, yeah, so you can give 1 of your lands haste and utilize it right away. And of course, if you are running a bunch of land creatures, well, Planar Outburst can definitely help you out while also really decimating your opponents, because it's going to destroy all non-land creatures, and chances are pretty high that your opponents don't have any land creatures, so their non-land creatures will be destroyed, and so will yours, obviously, but your land creatures, including the ones, the tokens, will be in play, and of course, you're able to swing out, or yeah, just tap them for mana, or do whatever you want to do with your land creatures. Speaking of doing whatever you want to do with your land creatures, you can really do that when you've got Terra Eternal in play. It's an enchantment that says all lands are indestructible, so no land destruction here, and of course, that applies to your land creature tokens. And having an army of indestructible land creature tokens can obviously help you out in a lot of ways. I mean, those can just be fantastic blockers for you. Again, maybe if you got some pump effects, you can just be a very, very deadly, hard to deal with army as well. Or just at the very least, now they're kind of like, just regular lands. Basically, they're protected. They're going to be hard for your opponents to deal with. So then, essentially, your Awaken the Woods just becomes a massive ramp spell. Speaking of which, my goodness, is it good to give them haste. Again, the major downside to those land creature tokens is that they, being creatures, are well more susceptible to board wipes and also have summoning sickness. But if you've got Fervor, they don't have summoning sickness essentially. They have haste. You can just attack with them right away or utilize their ability right away to tap for mana. So basically, again, it's a massive ramp spell where you, again, let's say you put 8 mana into that X. Cool. All right. You get 8 of those tokens. You can utilize them right away for 8 more mana. So you just went up to basically 18 mana in total, well, for your next turn, but you can still utilize 8 of it this turn. You kind of still got basically all your mana back except for 2 of that mana that you put into it. And of course, since we're talking about great enchantments with this new card, I mean, I've got to bring up Song of the World. So one of my favorite cards, and Eddie actually mentioned this one as well, it says whenever you cast a spell, populate. Yeah, you know what's cool? Creating token copies of lands. Who doesn't want to do that? Who doesn't want to make more and more lands just to say, you know what? Let's just make more lands. Let's make more mana. Let's be a green deck. I mean, obviously that has, white in as well. And let's just make a ton of land creature tokens to get way too far ahead of our opponents to just have so much mana that they're going to be jealous and probably just, quit because we have so much more mana than them. That's how it works, right? No, not at all. Okay, anyways, well, now that we've talked about cards that can really work with an impact, Awaken the Woods, let's talk about some commanders that can really utilize this brand new fantastic spell. And first up, I'm already scared because Eddie and I can already talked about this, and I think that he's probably going to put it in the Arixmethes deck that you may or may not have seen on Close Quarters that just absolutely loves Massive X spells. Arixmethes is a 12/12 Kraken, but not always. It enters battlefield tapped with 5 slumber counters on it. As long as it has a slumber counter on it, it's still a land. Whenever you cast a spell, you remove a slumber counter from it, and it can tap for green, blue. Basically, this is an explosive vegetation in your command zone that eventually will just be a 12/12 Kraken if you want it to be. But yeah, I mean, essentially guaranteed ramp at 4 mana, and yeah, ramping you by 2. You can get really far ahead of your opponents with a deck built around this, and yeah, utilizing a ton of X spells like Eddie does can be a very, very powerful thing, especially again, when this brand new X spell just gets Eddie even further ahead on mana by making creature tokens that, well, are also lands that can tap for a ton of mana. So I am going to be wary of playing that Arixmethes deck once this new card comes out. Not that I'm not already wary of that deck, because I definitely am. Speaking of being wary of this, new card in a deck, Adrix and Ev Twincasters, gross. A 2/2 Merfolk Wizard with Ward at 2. If one of our tokens be created on your control, twice that many of the tokens are created instead. You know how, just casting it normally is like basically kind of doubling up on your mana, essentially? I mean, nearly, right? Everything but 2, right? You have to, put for the green for the decks. Well, anyways, with Adrix and Ev, it's kind of like tripling your mana in a way, almost. Again, that X, let's say, again, it's 8. 8 is already a ton to essentially ramp yourself, right? 8 creature tokens that can each tap for a green. But now with this, that's 16. So, yeah, again, you can just skyrocket way ahead of your opponents, especially when you've got this kind of a doubling effect. I probably should have brought up doubling season. Someone's going to probably already comment and say, why didn't you bring up doubling season? Yeah, any of those kind of token doublers as well, learning procession. Any of those, including this commander, of course, can work very well with this brand new Mythic green spell. Speaking of doubling it up, well, you can also copy it with Riku of 2 Reflections, which says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may pay blue-red. If you do, copy that spell. You may choose targets for the copy. So yeah, Riku decks can definitely have some very big, splashy plays, and this is quite splashy itself too. Again, doubling up not only the amount of creature tokens you are getting, essentially, but also, well, nearly tripling, essentially, your mana in a way. So, of course, you can set yourself up for some other massive future turns, or, probably just play, a massive spell to, pump your giant team and then just take out your opponents too. But yeah, you've got plenty of ways to win with a commander like this. Moving on, a commander that can really make the most out of that spell right away is Smoot Voice of Dissent, a 3/4 flash, double strike vigilance, and haste. On top of that, other creatures you control have haste. And I guess also pay a white, tap on a target creature. Anyways, other creatures you control have haste. That is massive. Again, the big downside to those creature token lands being creatures is that, okay, well, again, they can be dealt with board wipes. And then also, they have summoning sickness. So you can't utilize their mana right away. But with this commander, it's basically like, No, yeah, you basically utilize all that mana you just put into it, except for like those 2 green ones. You get all the rest of that mana back. Basically, whatever you put into that X, you now just generate X green mana if you want it right away. And of course, you can have it, or yeah, again, if you've already got that Beastmaster Ascension or something out there like that, you can just swing with your giant army right away that you just made. So yeah, Smoot decks can definitely consider this new card. Another commander, well, this one that absolutely loves tokens, Chatterfang Squirrel General. Forest Walk. With 1 or more tokens be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens are created instead. Pay a black, sacrifice X squirrel, star creature gets minus or plus X minus X until end of turn. Oh my goodness. So yes, Chatterfang. Already a gross commander that can do a lot of very powerful things. Again, basically doubling up on your token production. And this, giant green spell that can make a ton of tokens that can also be lands, essentially. Yeah, it's going to absolutely love this. It's going to say, hey, let's just put a ton of mana to that X. Let's make a giant squirrel army on top of the Dryad Forest army, or whatever it is, a Forest Dryad army that we are making. That is also just going to give us a ton of mana. We can use the squirrels to take out creatures. We can use the lands for mana. We can use them to attack. We can do a lot of things with a Chatterfang deck, and this card, I think, can slot right in. But finally, another somewhat new commander that absolutely loves a ton of creatures. Well, Jetmir Nexus of Revels. Here we go. Creatures you control get +1 with 0 and have vigilance as long as you control 3 or more creatures. Creatures you control get +1 with 0 and have trample as long as you control 6 or more creatures. Creatures you control get +1 with 0 and have double strike as long as you control 9 or more creatures. Basically, yeah, you're going to be able to get to 9 quite easily with a deck built around Jetmir focused on that. And then basically your creatures are what? +3 +0. Vigilance, which is great for lands like these, Dryad forests that can tap for mana. Trample, also great in double strike. So yeah, your little forest creature token lands are going to be hitting for 8 damage in total each. They can also, swing and also tap for mana too. So have fun and good luck to your opponents. Yeah, Awaken the Woods can be great in a deck like this. But now this episode is coming to a close. It's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Awaken the Woods. Anyone else listening to the new Lost in the Woods soundtrack on Spotify? This keeps reminding me of it. No? Just me? Okay. Sarah Bareilles is amazing. Anyways, so is Awaken the Woods. Yeah, this card's going to see a lot of play out there. Again, token decks, there are already a lot of them out there. A lot of commanders absolutely love to make a ton of tokens. There are a lot of commanders that very much benefit you from making tokens. There's a lot of commanders out there that can really utilize tokens. It's a very powerful archetype, a very powerful theme. And this is just now, hey, what if we mix tokens with ramping you a ton into a giant X spell? Yeah, players are going to like that. So, of course, yeah, if you can find ways to make those lands more durable or more deadly, great. If you can find ways to give them haste, even better, so you can utilize that mana right away. There's a lot of powerful things you can do with this, and I definitely think I'm going to be seeing this sometime soon in a few decks that I'm playing against. Probably Ricksmithies. Ouch. So yeah, a very exciting spoiler that I can see a lot of players being very excited about. And speaking of exciting spoilers, make sure you're staying tuned to this channel for even more exciting spoilers and quick takes coming up. And with that, the show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thank you again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.